We're going to move on to kind of the second part of the day in a minute with Tom. Before that, can you just say about lunch? If you haven't paid your lunch already, in the next couple of breaks before lunchtime, you either pay at the bar, if it's by card, if you want to give me cash, I'll take a name here. So you just need to get that paid for before lunch as soon as possible. I think you said it's £17 with the drinks as well. Okay, so no further ado, I'm going to hand over to Tom.
First of all, first thing to say is obviously thanks to all the organisers who've done an amazing job putting this on today. Before I start the talk, I do have a tendency to go a bit scouse, I've noticed. As I speak about, there's three things I do. Apparently where I go more scouts going to my brother last week. One is public speaking, two is talking to my dad, three is talking about football. I also had anger as well, so I won't mention Ofsted in it. But yeah, I tend to go more scouts, so apologies if I do. The subject of my talk really today is about teacher snobbery. Okay, we heard from Graham there, fantastic talk about being careful in terms of what we say to young people, but sometimes I think we forget that as a profession when it comes to each other. As colleagues, I think we go into kind of a mode of just saying what comes to our minds, and sometimes that can have a massive impact on other teachers, and some of this is tongue-in-cheek, some of it's not, because actually I think especially the younger teachers can be affected when colleagues say things like, they behave for me. So I'd like to start really with a story, and the story is that when I was about 12, I came home from school, and I still remember this. There's very little I remember from that kind of age period, but I still remember Mum and Dad were both teachers. Mum was a maths teacher, Dad was a history teacher. I came home, me and my brother were sat at the dinner table, and my dad was visibly upset, and it was not often, I rarely ever see my dad upset, dead quiet, wasn't saying a word, didn't say a word, and my mum actually stepped in and said, your dad's had a bad day today. And I remember her saying it, Dad's had a bad day today, and I was thinking something really bad had happened. And she said, yeah, you know those worksheets that he does every night? That he designs himself. This was pre-word processing. He was actually drawing them. They were like cartoon sheets with very simple kind of literacy-based activities on, fill in the gaps. But the kids loved them, right? Apparently, according to the dad, loved them. Anyway, he spent ages on, every night, and he used to make photocopies of them. And anyway, he said one of your dad's new colleagues has basically told him he needs to ship them all out because they look terrible, and he needs to switch to word processing. And there was a load of other things that this colleague had apparently said about the sheets. And it really hurt me, actually, because I'd seen my dad doing these all this time and enjoying it and everything else. It's almost like someone had crafted something or built something, and then someone comes up, for a long time, and then someone just comes along and says it's rubbish. And I always remembered that. And now, take the most recent example, GCSE results day. Now this still goes on now. This kind of language still goes on now. My results were. Our results were. That entire narrative is based on false science. We know for a fact, according to lots and lots of research, that only up to about 20% of student outcomes can be put down to teacher impact or the difference a teacher makes. That's a fact. We don't want to accept it as teachers because I want to feel that I got those results. It was my results. I did it. And you know what? That's not saying teachers don't have any impact. But I'm just stating the fact that the impact we presume they have is much, much bigger when it comes to attainment. Not other things. Teacher can have a huge impact on character. We've just seen that with Graham. Huge impact. I'm literally talking about exams within that system. So I want to read you first a conversation that took place between two teachers on Twitter. And teacher A had shared a lovely idea. I thought it was alright anyway. Here we go. Teacher A. The resource works in my classroom, so I'm happy. Teacher B comes in. How do you define works in my classroom? No, this is going on. Teacher A, If it's helping my students progress, or helping them retain knowledge, and helping create a buzz, then I'm happy. Teacher B, but what if a different method? One backed up by research, because we all know that educational research is flawless, don't we? Could help them make more progress, retain more knowledge. What if creating a buzz works against the first two things? Okay. Teacher A, what if it aids the first two? Teacher B, if it genuinely does, great. There, small child. If it genuinely does, great, you poor thing, you don't know the truth yet. But some of what I see done in the name of engagement and creating a buzz gives me concerns, as the expert, gives me concerns that pupils will be thinking about the wrong things or could be misled about the subject they're learning about. Well, okay, but I'm not talking about what's being said here. I'm talking about one teacher being the expert over another. That's what I'm talking about. I'm not talking about the content. An expert, teacher A. I'm very confident in what I'm doing. And while I understand your concerns, I disagree. Done effectively, these problems are negligible. Teacher B. Done effectively is, of course, subjective. Teacher A. But are impact and outcome subjective? These are some measures, surely. Teacher B. Yes, of course, attainments and progress. Teacher A. Thus, does this not point to effective strategies? Teacher B. I don't know. Does it? What are your results like? Teacher A. Above national average and some of the best in the local area. Teacher B. Tremendous to hear, Connor. Congratulations. Wait for it. Here we go. Get ready for atomic bomb. What kind of demographic of pupils are you working with? Oh, Teacher A. We have 4 grammar schools around us. We have a large, high proportion of SEN students, and we're a large comprehensive. That was the end of the conversation. But, you know, it's that kind of conversation that happens, seems to happen every day on social media, and actually, it happens in schools too. Because it happens after lesson observations. Cat Howard, Twitter. Observation feedback. Maybe, if they did less learning and more doing, it might be better. Like a Diamond 9 would have made that lesson. Genuine quote feedback. Claire Round, Twitter. I got told my lesson would have been outstanding if I'd removed a dead plant from the back of the classroom. Dean Boddington on Twitter. This was a lesson on the 5 pillars of Islam. Could you have differentiated for the lower ability, giving them the 3 pillars of Islam? Now, the serious bit of this is that these are outlandish examples, but for the last 20 years, we've had one teacher judging other teachers based on their results. No, that just explains that we can't really do that. I know people will disagree. No, I'm sorry. You can make some observations. You can't make a judgment. You can't make an overall judgment just on results. You can't make an overall judgment on individual lesson observations. I'm just wondering about. I'll come on to my final point at the end about teacher autonomy, but you know, I just struggle to see that you can make these judgments the way that we do. And the reason is that research tells us that when someone was observed by Ofsted, up to 2 years ago when they became saints and angels, and it was all myths, well, no past, but up until that point, one-off lesson observations, when someone was judged outstanding, the following lesson, if the observer came back for the next lesson, 50 to 75% of the judgments would change from that lesson to the next one when observers went in. That's 2014 research by Co. 63% of single lesson observations carry the wrong judgment. So if somebody walks in on a learning walk for 25 minutes, makes a judgment, one-off lesson, 63% of those judgments are wrong, based on the learning that actually takes place. When the learning is actually measured, that each student has made properly, I think it's something like 4% of the lesson observations were outstanding, that were rated outstanding. 63% were wrong. So it's this kind of research, and this is what we've been doing. Another example, carrying on the same theme. Person published a very popular resource, one of the most popular resources online, the emoji exit ticket. Okay? The emoji, one of the highest downloaded resources on UK EdChat. Okay? In fact, it's the top download. They keep tweeting it out. Hey, look at this, it's been there for 2 years. Because it's getting so many people have used it successfully. The moment people saw the emoji, triggered. Absolutely triggered. And the tirade against, which has led to the author of the resource perhaps promoting it less. Because in one blog it was described as an abomination. This is a person who'd never spoken to the teacher to see how the resource was actually used or how it would benefit the students. I mean, we don't know, do we? What that teacher was thinking or whatever. And obviously, by the rate of download, it's obviously benefited other teachers. Mr. Finn on Twitter, this was yesterday. I've seen three of these kind of statements made in the last week. I'm not sure why, when or how teacher Twitter has become overrun with arrogant teachers strutting around like peacocks, shooting down fellow teachers' ideas. We as teachers are entitled to do what we feel would work best in our classroom with our own set of children, are we not? And this was in response to getting a bit fed up of being policed by fellow professionals on social media and perhaps in their workplaces too. Teacher autonomy, for me, is so important in teacher development. I'll come back to that in a minute. But there are other pressures. It's not just from fellow teachers, also from the system, okay, as well. You know, obviously it comes from policies. And when I'm talking about the pressure to be a certain way, teach a certain way, do things a certain way, get certain feedback, whatever, okay, that pressure is so inherent that we're not actually allowing teachers to develop their teacher selves. We're not actually allowing them time to figure out what they're good at. Let me give you an example. Sutton Trust research, something like 60%, they said the best teaching method was direct instruction. Yeah, I can believe that, especially for getting exam results. I can completely believe that direct instruction is the best teacher method for teaching. However, okay, in like third or fourth or fifth or whatever was a more inquiry-based approach, a more discovery learning-based approach. But that teacher might be better at teaching that way. So therefore, they're going to get better outcomes, or they're going to be able to teach better using some other methods, rather than, because this research says it's the best. Well, it might be the best for a teacher who can utilise that way of teaching, but it might not be the best for someone else who's trying to figure out how they teach and how they connect with students. And it's very frustrating for me that sometimes you might see someone, how quickly can they meet the lesson objective? Yeah, well, if I just tell them, right? Yeah, I mean, if I just tell them, lesson objective, you know, what is this? Well, there you go, is the information. Yeah, valid. And do you know what? In an efficiency-based model, in an exam results-based system, okay, but if we're looking at developing students in a wider sense, if I do something where they work collaboratively and it takes 2 more lessons to do it, and I'm sorry if this is common, you know, I'm sure a lot of you are going, yeah, I know. And, you know, I'm not saying this is rocket science, but it needs to be said, apparently. But, you know, if they spend 2 or 3 lessons doing an inquiry-based activity, they're going to learn a lot about each other. They're going to learn a lot about how to communicate with each other. And, you know, I know what's happening now. The darts are coming on Twitter, on the live stream, progressive. but you know, actually, I'm pragmatic. And that's what I think every good professional I've met is to some extent or another pragmatic in the classroom. They're not tied in to a particular way, and they certainly don't evangelise onto other teachers saying that their way is better. So I think there's some important points. And the policy pressure as well. What we're seeing now on a serious level in the policy sense is we're seeing Ofsted actually pallying up with government about the results that students have had in places like Singapore and South Korea. And they're basically buying in to say, you know, we need a curriculum, we need a way of teaching that is what we would deem more traditional. I mean, that's what the way the policy is going particularly in secondary level. I mean, primary perhaps different, but certainly that's the mode of travel at the moment. There is an argument to say that the inspectorate should not in any way interfere in dictating to teachers how they should teach or pass comment on it. I don't know whether they should be away from that scenario, but that's essentially the mode of travel. And 20 years ago it was the other way around, of course, because you had people who were traditional, who were actually getting more traditional chalk and talk, you know, and always the lecturing all day and whatever. I do all this, you know, fancy dance stuff. So it works both ways. But what I think we need to get away from is that labelling and that intrusion into a teacher's autonomy. And I've written down a few things in terms of what I feel teachers who can be their teacher selves actually are. So what is a teacher who is their teacher self? And I've said a teacher who understands their context and knows what works for their students. A teacher who has the belief and confidence to change direction in a lesson or a series of lessons for the benefit of their students. Flexibility. A teacher who follows their particular passion and isn't dictated to on what their passion should be. Also, a teacher who isn't restricted by a particular framework or a particular dictatorial document on how to teach. Basically, I think we need more autonomy. We need to allow teachers to figure out what they're doing themselves as professionals, because that's what they're qualified to do. To have some self-reflection in their own practice and to interfere much less than we are in schools through office. And this is not an argument against CPD, by the way. This is technically classed as CPD. It's not an argument. CPD is amazing. It's so important. This is just an argument against making judgments on fellow professionals and being perhaps as careful as we can be on how we see other professionals within our institutions and just in general on social media maybe. Thanks very much. That's probably short, but anyway, it doesn't matter.